Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. If you are subscribed here, if you are new here, my name is Paige Hebert. I am a moderate conservative goth on YouTube, and I have to bring it up because we're going to be responding to a video, specifically me responding to a video that I recently found not too long ago because this was under my recommendations when I went on YouTube. We're going to be responding to a video called The Idiocy of TikTok's Conservative Goths. Now, this is kind of biased for me because I don't have a TikTok. I will more than likely never get one despite, Donald Trump basically getting TikTok back over here in the US. But either way, I just hate the app with the passion. Even if there are people that have similar mindsets like mine, I can't stand that app for multiple different reasons. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're going to be talking about this woman's perspective, what she thinks about conservative goths, and we're gonna see how I handle this, because the last time I talked about this, there were people in the comment section when I talked about my video on Vision Videos response to conservative goths, which I will leave that down in the description below. Let's watch and see what this YouTuber has to say.
So recently, I received this comment. I continue to beg you to make a video about the conservative goths on TikTok. Conservatives don't understand the history of goth fashion. One of them was wearing a ghost t-shirt. Please cover this, I beg you. Give me 1 second.
So that comment section that she just showed you, it's not that we don't understand the history of how the goth community started. It's just the fact that times have changed now since then. Are there still places around the world, where being ultra conservative is like a God bless sin, and being anything liberal or liberating is considered a sin at certain places around the world? Yes. I'm not saying that there isn't. This isn't the 70s or 80s anymore when the goth community was rampant and where they really showed up on their political beliefs on what was considered ultra conservative and being ultra liberal back in those days. What we're saying is that nowadays, the reason why there are conservative goths now is because we're tired of the woke ass community ruining what liberals used to be.
Unfortunately, I couldn't find the original TikTok of the conservative goth wearing a ghost shirt. I think that she took the video down, but I did find another goth who stitched her original video.
Can't be goth and conservative. I'm so tired of hearing, oh, you can't be goth, you can't be Republican.
Because you literally can't. I guarantee you that if you go to any goth club or any scene in your area, any of the goths that you meet are not going to agree with your views. And that's because not only is goth a music-based subculture, it is also a derivative from punk. Which, if you know anything about punk values, they do not align with conservative Republican values. You're welcome to call yourself goth all you want, but your values don't align with the subculture, and that's just point blank period.
And here's the whole, oh, you can't be in this party group because blah, blah, blah. You think of this slightly different than we do. Okay, I already don't like that mindset from day one. Even before I came out as goth, I had this people say that to me since the moment I was in college. And it really starting to irk me over and over as time goes by. What the girl in that last video just said is not completely correct, and I can tell you this right now as somebody who is the daughter of somebody who grew up in the punk era, can tell you it wasn't just conservatives that were against punks. There were also Democrats who didn't like punks either because they were, not following the rules and not following what is structurally acceptable back then too. It wasn't just the ultra conservatives back in those days. And this is when it really pisses me off, when there's certain communities, especially the goth and woke community, that are always saying, oh, you can't be a part of this because you think this slightly different than we do. To think like that is very toxic to me.
Yeah, I agree. You can call yourself a conservative goth, but realize that you won't make many goth friends if you do. Right-wing ideology isn't prevalent in the goth subculture, and most goths see conservatism as diametrically opposed to goth values and ideals. We'll discuss the history and politics of the goth subculture later in the video, but first we must address the elephant in the room, the ghost shirt. The irony of wearing a ghost shirt while talking about how you're a Republican goth is genuinely astonishing. You all know that I'm obsessed with the band Ghost. It's actually one of my special interests, but you don't have to be a mega fan like I am to know that Ghost's music stands in direct opposition to modern-day republicanism.
I do like that band a lot too, but here's the thing. Listen, if you want to listen to a band that's politically driven like Green Day or Ghost or even Visual Video, and there's plenty of more. Yes, you are right. They definitely are more into the liberal mindsets of it, but you also have to understand times have also changed as well as far as like American culture goes too, and even first world culture goes too. And yes, at the beginning, yes, conservatives were very much against it back then. Now, I shouldn't have to tell you that if you listen to music that isn't 100% your political beliefs that you're automatically a fake fan or whatever. No, I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that there are some of those people who just straight up want to listen to the music because it sounds beautiful. It sounds awesome. It sounds glorious to them. It sounds absolutely dark and mysterious. I could go past on that, and this is something that people don't really talk about as much either, is that there are people who are goth who are apolitical. They're just there for the art and the music and even the aesthetic. They're not always 100% with the politics, and the funny thing is they get shit on too. It's not that they're not learning the history of it, they're just maybe new to it, or they just don't give a shit about it and just want to move on with their life. I get what this YouTuber is saying, that in the beginning how the goth community was more liberal. I understand that, but remember, that was back then when goth was considered an outcast back then. You have to remember that, okay? It's not like what it is in most areas in the US nowadays. And the funny thing is, I've met people who are conservative and they look at me and they usually don't give a shit. Anybody can just look at you and say, oh, cool, you've got beautiful hair, you've got a really awesome looking aesthetic. And they might not know your political view. And that's totally fine. If you don't drag it on to people, then, we'll just move on at the end of the day.
I mean, the band's entire theatrical concept satirizes a religious institution that weaponized religion to consolidate political power. Kind of like how Christian nationalism has taken over the Republican Party and is currently directing the actions of Trump's administration through their Project 2025. Like, talking about being a Republican goth while wearing a Ghost shirt is like talking about being a vegan while you're holding a piece of bacon. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
It probably doesn't make sense to you because you're used to that ideology. I don't have anything against this YouTuber named AntiBot. I think I'm saying her name right, but let me down in the comments below if I'm not. I don't have anything against this YouTuber, but it sounds like to me she's just used to the whole idea of this is because this is most common and has to make sense everywhere else 100%, and it's very black and white. No. And I love the fact that she's bringing up the Project 2025 when I thought from the very moment when I heard that it was complete bullshit. It was literally made by ultra leftist feminists who are part of the ultra woke community, who were so concerned about women's rights because he won the election, and so concerned about the LGBT rights because of the election that he won, that he's going to take them away in every moment like it's the 1950s. No! For fuck's sake, I shouldn't have to tell you this, but Donald Trump had 2 gay weddings at his Mar-a-Lago place. He literally was the first president to endorse LGBT rights. I know Obama signed a petition for LGBT people to get married all 50 states, but that don't always mean jack shit when he's literally signing a piece of paper. I'm just pointing it out there because actions speak a lot louder than words. And I'm not sure if this YouTuber is aware of this, but it's true, yes, Republicans are usually Christians, and Christians are more Republican. I get that. You know, there is some truth to that. But that doesn't mean all of them are against the goth community, and to insinuate that is just stupid.
Their latest album, Impera, is about the rise and fall of empires and makes allusions to Republican politicians in multiple songs. The song 20s is a commentary on the political landscape of Trump's first term, including paraphrasing direct quotes from Trump, like, "We'll be grabbing them all by the hoo-haws." I love that he changed it to hoo-haws. Tobias Forge, the man behind Ghost, even compares Trump's administration to Germany with the lines, "Direct the course of collision for the Reich to come to fruition."
Okay, I'm just gonna say this right here as well, too. This is so insulting when I hear about Donald Trump being compared to a Nazi. And you wanna know why I find this insulting? Even if I wasn't a Trump supporter, that is insulting to my intelligence. My grandmother's family, during around World War II in Nuremberg, Germany, were part of the resistance and were against Adolf Hitler, when they've actually seen their own neighbors and even citizens taken away from their residency. And guess what? I'm sorry to burst your very sensitive bubble here, but Donald Trump is nowhere near as Adolf Hitler, and to compare him that is a legitimate fucking insult to people who live in third world countries like North Korea, where they are literally fucking prisoners over there who can't even eat certain food, can't even eat really at all, and are literally hanged for not going by a dictator's rule. To say that Donald Trump is that? No! I find that so insulting on that. Even if I wasn't goth, that's just insulting in so many levels. Try saying that to other people in other countries, what they think of Donald Trump. I guarantee you, most of them would think otherwise. And also, that whole line of Donald Trump grabbing on the you-know-what, dude, that was a joke made a long time ago when he literally said, "if you let them," or as I'm paraphrasing, grab them by the you-know-what, if they let you. In other words, if they don't, then he's not going to do it. This, to me, just comes from somebody who's just sensitive to dark humor. I'm not saying that people who are sexually assaulted should be mocked at all. Not at all. I have family members who have been sexually assaulted. But the problem here is that when you simulate this very black and white statement because he said it as opposed to actually doing it, dude, bruh, like, I don't think I have to tell you that that was at a very different time in culture, and most of the things he said have nowhere been nearly as bad as that.
As its name implies, the song Griftwood, also from the Impera album, is about those who co-opt religion to secure political power. It directly calls out Christian nationalism and is aimed at former Vice President Mike Pence. The line, "Holy Mother, you washeth the sin from my feet," makes fun of the fact that Pence's nickname for his wife is apparently Mother. I'm sorry, the only person that anyone is allowed to call Mother is Lady Gaga, or maybe ContraPoints, and I'll die on that hill.
What an odd thing to say.
In an interview about the song for Loudwire, Forge even said that Pence qualifies for a front row ticket to hell, and that conservatives are taking the world back to medieval times.
Really? All conservatives are going back to medieval times? Are you serious about that? No, the only group of people I think that would definitely go back to medieval times are definitely more of communists, I would say. That's definitely going back more to medieval times, I would say on that. But whatever, girl, go off all you can. And this might be the last segment on the whole songs that she talks about, on the band Ghost talks about. I'll even say this as a Trump supporter here. I never really liked Mike Pence. I never really liked Mike Pence. He didn't really do much during the first presidency when Trump was elected as much more than Donald Trump did. That's why I like our vice president a lot more now than when Mike Pence was in office the last time. And yes, I am aware that our new vice president made that whole comment of all women who don't have children are crazy cat ladies, whatever, but I just found that to be more funny than insulting, which which, okay, yeah, it is a little bit true, but since I do have cats and I don't have kids myself, but come on, I had to laugh at that more than anything else during that election. Most conservatives, as far as I'm aware of, just want to move on past to what liberals think what conservatives are doing, when the reality is the ultra leftists are the ones that are going back in time, but let's move on.
I really don't mean to sound rude, but if you're unironically calling yourself a Republican goth while wearing a ghost shirt, you're either a poser or you're just like really dense. Not only would this woman be ousted from most goth clubs, but she'd probably be unwelcomed in the ghost fandom. We ghouls are unambiguously supportive of LGBT folks, minority groups, and disabled individuals. And as someone who's part of the ghost fandom, I'll be the first to say that this Trump supporter can get the fuck out.
Okay, that comment right there is exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, seriously, that is really rude to be saying that to anyone. Like, listen, I follow certain content creators who, Camilla, I'm not going to say, well, if since you're not part of it, then fuck you. No, that's so disrespectful in so many ways. And wow, you're such a loving person, aren't you, for saying that? And to emulate that they would be kicking you out because of this and that is basically what I just said from square one. That is such a toxic mindset to be saying that to anybody. And we don't even know what the person who says are conservative and goth are going through too. Maybe they went through some sort of depression or they've lost family. I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't even say that to people who are woke, who are ultra left. We don't know what they went through, but I'm being critical about this because it's funny that you're saying that when the ultra left are the same ones who literally cheered when Donald Trump almost got killed. What is wrong with you, girl?
So apparently there's a handful of creators on TikTok calling themselves conservative or Republican or MAGA goths. Them. Goths can't be conservatives. Always have been, always will be. Oh, God. She's wearing a Trump hat. Drink a bucket of bleach or vote for Kamala. Yeah. All-American nightmare, that is for sure. Hashtag Trump train. I used to work with this guy. Well, where I used to work, pretty much everybody was, hey, Republican. And this guy would walk around our building yelling Trump train over and over again. It was the most obnoxious thing.
Okay, I will say this right there. Whoever that guy is, that's not all of us. That guy just sounds like a complete obnoxious dick. So I will say any fan base, no matter what, there's always going to be that one person that has to ruin it. And I'm sorry that that guy was annoying you, but that's not all of us. Actually, again, I've even said this. Most of the people that I've met that made a Make America Great Again hat, most of them have been pretty chill around me. Actually, there is a veteran who used to be in the military that had a hat. He had his dog with him, a service dog specifically, who was so sweet to people, and he didn't care if they were goth or not. I mean, he clearly looked at me one day, and he was so nice to me. So, no, that's not all of us. So, I'm sorry you met the one bad egg that was like that.
When I discover another punk/goth/emo/alt conservative.
Do you want to form an alliance with me? Absolutely, I do. Good, excellent.
Oh, the Trump, the Trump beanie. Why is it this like ugly puke green color? Can't be alt/goth/emo and conservative is the most chronically online statement. It's not being chronically online, it's just being educated. Yikes. How embarrassing.
It's not just being educated, it's also having a different perspective. Here you are saying that you're not up for judgment, yet you're judging them. How embarrassing.
So I think that most people, even those outside the subculture, intuitively understand the goth lifestyle to be associated with leftist politics and thus oppositional to conservative values. Like, this is just common knowledge. I think if you got two brain cells to rub together, you probably know that goth ideology doesn't mesh with conservatism. But me being me, I didn't want to make a video just calling conservative goths ignorant dum-dums and leaving it at that.
And yeah, you are right here in this video. I don't care what your political views are unless you're not hurting people, but this is actually quite pretty hurtful to those who are conservative, even if they're not like a hardcore conservative at all in the goth community. They might just be mild or moderate conservative like me. That's still a very hurtful and harmful way to put it out. Yes, at the beginning, during the goth community, it was, and you're right about that. But you gotta remember, and I'm gonna say it again, that was then, this is now. And we gotta move past on that. And if you wanna move past by it, you have to understand that we gotta stop guilt shaming people and stop making people feeling guilty over that's something that's not 100% their value or what you want it to be.
Instead, while researching for this video, I read multiple books on the goth subculture to hopefully give my viewers a deeper understanding of why so many goths find their conservative counterparts problematic. According to Goth Undead Subculture, a collection of academic essays on the goth scene and a resource I used heavily for this video, goth traces its origins back to the early days of punk. Punk emerged in the 1970s in New York and Britain and is a subculture centered around music, ideology, and fashion. Broadly speaking, punks value nonconformity and a do-it-yourself mentality. Ideological and political stances such as anti-capitalism, anti-establishment, and anarchism are ubiquitous in punk circles. While there is a small minority of punks that hold to far-right and often fascist beliefs, they're primarily ostracized by the larger punk community. If you're looking for an example of what most punks think about right-leaning punks, just listen to Nazi Punks Fuck Off by Dead Kennedys. Most people in the scene hold this song up as a paragon of punk ideals.
Okay, I'll give you this. You're right. The punk era, the goth era, they're against like capitalism from back in those days. Mind you, back in those days, capitalism was ran very differently than how it is now in the US and other first world countries. Again, I'm going to bring it up. That was then, this is now. And I'll even say it as a conservatives, any far-right conservative, like ultra-far-right conservatives, I will call you out immediately for especially racist, homophobic, and other ideologies that are absolutely toxic that do make Republicans like me look absolutely terrible. I will call them out. I'll give you that. You're definitely right about that. But the problem with this statement is that any conservative are all fascists. No. I don't agree with that. There have actually been other things that Democrats have done far more worse too, besides just Republicans. There have been Democrats in the past that have been homophobic, that have been racist, and all of that too. It's not just a Republican. Like I said, I don't like this whole black and white mindset where, well, if you're this, then you're that. That's not always.
As a post-punk subculture, goth follows in punk's footsteps, centering around music and fashion. Well-known gothic bands include Bauhaus, Joy Division, The Cure, Susie and the Banshees, and my personal favorite, Sisters of Mercy. Gothic fashion elements include black clothing that's often thrifted, silver jewelry, dark makeup, Victorian corsets, and leather. There are also different types of goths who highlight particular aspects of goth fashion and music, from the original 70s era trad goths who sport deathly white makeup and corsets, to cyber goths who take on a more futuristic look, to the recent and controversial clean goth popularized by TikTokers. Really, what do we all think about clean goths? I'm gonna go ahead and clock myself and admit that my style often falls into the category of clean goth. I don't really consider myself goth to begin with, but I do love me some Disturbia, and if any brand out there is considered clean goth, it would definitely be them. But you know, most goths say that all it really takes to be goth is listening to goth music and holding to goth ideals, which I actually do. So maybe I am goth.
I will say this as somebody who's part of the alternative goth community right here. I also don't like the other goths who are saying what is and what isn't based on how heavily you dressed into the goth subculture and how much makeup you wear in this subculture and whatnot. I don't like that at all. That's why I've kind of stopped watching YouTubers like It's Black Friday, because they've had to hold that mindset for so long. And it's just, I get it. They're not really bullying them so much per se, but they're definitely a lot more critical that has a more different type of subgenre of goth they are making themselves out to be. I don't like that. And just to say that you love the dark music or the music in general that they play, and just ideology alone makes you goth. Hate to break it to you, girl. No. I think what my other problem with that is it just comes across as a popularity contest with these goth communities where there's different types of goths, like, you know, the traditional goth, the pastel ones, or the cyber ones, or like what she just said there. But the problem is that there's also those ones that love to argue about it, like which one's more perfect and which one isn't, and that's just to me another toxic side of it. That's why you don't really see me post anything what events I'm at my area a lot that's in the goth subculture, because there's a lot of them that think like that, which one's better and which one isn't, and to me I'm just not up for that.
Anyway, goth also inherited punk's nonconformist attitude, and as a subculture is socially categorized as a perceived deviation from normative ideals. Goths also adopted the ideological and political stances of punks, but in some ways expanded these stances even further, namely on issues regarding sex and gender. Punk's ethos, its militant anti-sexual anarchy, was challenged by the Gothics' romantic obsessions with death, darkness, and perverse sexuality. Punk's carnivalesque but often rigid male body was supplanted by an androgynous Gothic body. You're probably wondering, what is militant anti-sexual anarchy? I know you're probably wondering that, because when I read through this book, I was like, what the hell is that? While this isn't true of the entire subculture, there is a strain of punks who hold negative perceptions of sexual activity, especially casual sex. This is perhaps most well known in scenes like straight edge, an offshoot of hardcore punk, in which adherents refrain from alcohol, substances, and sometimes casual sex. Anti-sexual anarchist punks believe that the state uses sex to control people, that sex is akin to hard drugs, and that any form of pornography is detrimental to human flourishing. As far as I can tell, anti-sexual anarchist punks aren't really around these days. In contrast, many goths embrace sexuality, especially expressions of sexuality that society deems perverse.
I'll give you this as well, too. Yes, there are people in the goth community and even the punk community who usually are not very sexual or sexually open. They might even be asexual, and that's totally fine. And yes, I will even say as a conservative right here, I'm not as so vanilla when it comes to in the bedroom. If you are consenting adults, you can do whatever the fuck you want in the bedroom. I don't care, long as you're not hurting anybody and it's consent and morally right on the bedroom, go right ahead. I don't care, just at least you're not breaking any laws. But I also do have a problem with also part of the goth community as well that are overly sexualized too. Like, not even just people who fetishize us, but just people in general who are goth and they may be, you know, over sexualizing themselves or others because they just want to and just to get attention. That already makes the fetishization of goths look really bad, and why there's people that are still thrown off by us that way. I will say that does make us look bad in that aspect too. But in general, if you are part of the community that's asexual or you just are sexually active, whatever, go right ahead. If you're a consenting adult, go right ahead. I don't care. Just at least you know you don't bring your kinks out in public. That's just my main point of that.
This is partly why an interest in vampirism and vampire tales is so common among goths. In addition to symbolizing societal alienation and a proclivity toward darkness, vampires symbolize seduction, lust, and irrational longing. I think Eggers' 2024 remake of Nosferatu, a reimagining of Bram Stoker's 1897 Gothic novel Dracula, beautifully captures a vampiric seduction that is both irresistible and, frankly, repulsive. Ellen, the movie's protagonist, finds herself caught between loathing and yearning or lusting for Orlok, the most unquestionably grotesque portrayal of Dracula in film. In many ways, Eggers' Nosferatu is quintessential goth in its portrayal of decaying eroticism and bleak aesthetics. Anyway, it's not just through vampiric fantasies that goths subvert societal norms regarding gender and sexuality. I'll just say it like this. Goth is very queer. From the very beginning, the goth scene was inclusive of queer and gender-diverse folks. The first goth club, the Batcave in London, opened in 1982 and was said to be where the more dressy punks congregated. The club was described by gay men as a safe place to be, and the club played host to the local fetish scene. Since then, goth clubs have welcomed those who are queer, transgender, or wish to express the more feminine or soft aspects of their personality, especially for those that society holds to masculine norms.
Okay, this is another reason why I don't like the far left extremists when it comes to the goth community as here. Saying that the goth community was also queer, I don't know. I feel like if you ask somebody in the LGBT community back in like the 70s or 80s, I don't know, didn't that word used to be an insult to you guys back then? And now all of a sudden it's not? I really don't get that. See, that's the other hypocrisy right there. We're using things like queerness or all of those kind of words that the woke community likes to use. And wasn't that really an insult back in those days? And now all of a sudden it's not. I don't know. That's another discussion for another day. And while, yes, she is right that it was definitely that community that was one of those communities that definitely expressed themselves, especially at like bars and clubs back in those days. I will admit, yes, it was definitely a lot more open for like people who are gay back then to go to those clubs. But remember, I said this before, it was back in those days. And yes, I am aware conservatism and liberalism was very different back around in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. But it's not that time period anymore in the US or in other first world countries. I get it. You love to bring this up because, you know, it's a part of history. And I think it's a part of history too. We should definitely learn from what not to repeat again. But knowing people, they love to repeat things that they disagree with. And it's certainly contradicting that you're judging people who have a different perspective when all they're just doing is just critiquing and criticizing some of the aspects of the community, not all of it. To make an assumption that all conservative goths are like also anti-LGBT as well? No! There's conservatives I've heard online and even in public who are pro-LGBT. They're just not up to the extreme woke ideology where they say all children should have their genitals mutilated if they're transgender, which if you are transgender, there's a time and place for when you should have surgery for bottom surgery, top surgery, no matter what opposite gender you feel like at a legal age. But that's just how I feel about that.
For many goth men, androgyny is a central component of their aesthetic. At its most utopian, goth culture helps to cultivate anti-heteronormative sexualities, unconventional genders, and non-binaristic social relations between the sexes. Lesbians and gays are a substantial presence in the subculture, and goth queercore communities flourish in many cities. Propaganda, a popular goth and fetish magazine that ran from 1982 until 2003, regularly featured gender-bending outfits and transgender models. Before the magazine went defunct, photographer and editor Fred H. Berger released an issue featuring masculine androgynous women who he felt were underrepresented in the goth scene. The stylized photographs included women with short hair and bullet patches, something that was quite controversial for the time. In a 2015 interview with Dazed, Berger mentioned how his magazine had actually sparked outrage among the religious right. At one point, the Christian activist group Focus on the Family interviewed Berger about propaganda.
I'll even say that Christian group she just mentioned last, I'll even admit, people like that make me want to roll my eyes and just say, whatever, dude, fuck off. But you just contradicted yourself right there. Back in those days, earlier you were just saying that, oh, you don't understand why there's goths who can be called themselves a conservative. Meanwhile, you just mentioned right there, back in those days, from the early 80s to the early early 2000s, that magazine propaganda showed pictures of, when they couldn't come out as themselves back then. Like, do you not hear yourself before recording all this? You certainly like to flip-flop around that, huh?
Conservative Christians also claimed propaganda invoked evil spirits. Apparently, these Christians had read an article from the magazine about how the band Bauhaus had experienced several technical difficulties while recording their song Stigmata Martyr. Members of Bauhaus said in the article that they felt like their recording studio was possessed, a remark these Christians took literally. I really have no idea why they accused propaganda of conjuring evil spirits because of something that happened to Bauhaus, but in the mind of the religious right, they're both on the same satanic team. It could also be said that the David Bowie inspired traditional goth makeup with its
be a thing. I know I'm going to get people in the comment section saying that I don't understand or whatnot. No, I do. I've definitely learned of the history myself too. I'm just saying the perspective of being goth is now. I think most of what being goth is now is more of anti-woke versus woke goth now. That's how I mainly see it. Not so much of whether if it's very black and white, whether it's conservative or Democrat all the time, which that's part of it. But I think mainly it's just a woke versus anti-woke goths now. That's how I see it as it is. If you guys enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you want to check out more of my content, and if you like any of the rest of my videos, besides just giving a thumbs up on the rest of the other videos I make sure to hit the subscribe button then if you liked it all. I'm also going to put out, now this is kind of outside of the topic of my video before I leave with you guys here. I also put out my link for my commission information if you guys want to request a commission down below as well. The other information including my link tree where you can find my social and art shops. Thank you all for listening and have a great day and take care of yourself.